So good afternoon. This is Brian Kennedy. I'm with the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I'd like to welcome everybody to our very first virtual help desk session to help our companies navigate the SBA loan process. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Vice President for Operations and Government Affairs at the Pittsburgh Technology Council. We have been doing, as you can imagine, quite a bit of work on SBA loans, not only from an educational process like we're doing today, but also from a lobbying perspective. A number of issues with the program that are impacting our startup companies and their ability to qualify for the loans. So we've been busy in Washington, D.C., but also coordinating with the local office of the SBA here. A little bit about this series. We've decided to kick off a daily show, at least for the next few days, this week, maybe into early next week, to help give our companies a little bit of support as they're tackling questions dealing with the different PPP and EIDL loan programs that are out there in existence. Really importantly, this is a public forum. We have, looks like we have 37 people joining us, so please don't share anything that's proprietary or confidential because it is public. Also, these shows are going to be recorded so that we can share some of the information and the answers with our other member companies in between shows. Very importantly to let you know, today we're hosting Schneider Downs. Tomorrow will be PNC Bank. Thursday we'll be joined by CLA Associates, and I'm still working on Friday. But I want to say special thanks to all the firms, and including our guest today from Schneider Downs, for agreeing to join us right now. As you can imagine, this is normally a very busy time for firms like this because it's tax time. But right now, demand from existing companies is overwhelming. So we've put together a coalition of the willing, and I will tell you, not everyone was willing. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest today, Joe Rosenthal, who is a shareholder and director of Schneider Downs Business Advisors. He's going to start out by giving you, the group, some quick updates on some things that changed last night and how those changes are impacting applications today. And after a quick update about those changes and a little bit about what they're doing, we're going to move straight into your questions. If you have a question, please enter that question into the chat group. You're going to notice that most of you, you have your microphones on mute. That's done so that we don't have any background noise interrupting the call. So if you have questions, go ahead and post those in the chat section, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can today. If we don't, as we stated, we're recording these, and we will share these questions with our next guests for the week and try to get you answers and post them as quickly as we get them. So with that, Joel, welcome to our virtual help desk session, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for the introduction. Real quickly with you today, I'm Joel Rosenthal. I'm a shareholder at Schneider Downs. We're a regional firm of over 500 people, both in Pittsburgh and Columbus. As you can see, Brian just put up our web page. We have provided, and I'll fill you in on how we arrived at this, plenty of information relative to not only the CARES Act and the SBA loans, but other financial and business advisory type thoughts relative to the current legislation and current activities. I do want to hope that everybody is healthy along with their family, and that they're able to be productive, and hopefully the companies are working, and hopefully some of these programs will help keep everybody working and productive, and so when we get to the other side of this, we can all be successful with that. With me today is Brian Matthews, who is a senior manager in the business advisory group at Schneider Downs. Brian has been one of the team members, which I'll explain in a second, who has really dug deep into this and helped us provide not only information that's on our website, but also information relative, to our clients. And from that standpoint, our approach was from the beginning that we put together I'm going to call it a SWAT team. I don't want to use task force. It seems, I'm not sure what connotation that gets anymore, but a SWAT team to attack all these laws, the EIDL, you know, both the grant and the loans, the CARES Act, the two prior acts. Somebody just sent me that the Senate will vote to pass more small business aid Thursday, coming from Senator McConnell. So hopefully there's clarity on this prior to that coming out. So our team was set up, there's about 5 of us on the team, set up to really review the loans and the law, try to provide information, you know, both to our, like I said, our clients and to the outside world who need help getting through this. We are, you know, working with any of our clients that need help, trying to provide them advice, such as which loan applies to them, does it apply, and as we get into some of the issues, and I'm sure some of the questions that we're going to get, how do you translate some of these items into reality? We have helped with, you know, applications and mostly consulting, and like I said, doing some economic calculations along with our tax department and our benefits group, who have really jumped in on some of the other provisions, such as the tax credits and unemployment provisions of these laws. Some of the, just a little background, some of the difficult areas that we've encountered, I include the affiliations rule to come to the 500, what payroll to include, whether federal taxes that are withheld get excluded from payroll costs or don't get excluded from payroll costs, for what the forgiveness amounts are going to be and how you calculate that. For employers, do you include 1099 independent contractors? And there's a $100,000 limitation on salary, and that was not clearly defined. This morning or late last night, the SBA provided a certain amount of Q&A responses, which certainly helped clarify many of the items. They did clarify that the affiliation rules still apply, as they stated in the interim final rule. If everybody who's not clear, the act was passed, I think, on March 27th. Congress finally passed it. They had 5 days to issue rules. The interim final rule, which I think is an oxymoron, was issued on April 2nd, and then they've been issuing Q&As. We got a significant amount of Q&As on April 6th, which was last night. They do get some clarification in the affiliation rules on the minority holders. They can give up their rights, which can free up the affiliation. They did clarify that the $100,000 compensation question, what it included, and they reduced it down to just cash compensation and not necessarily include the benefits, doesn't include benefits that are, I guess, deemed non-cash, including retirement benefits. There's clarification on seasonal businesses. There's clarification if you're a professional employer organization, and if you use a professional employer organization, how you can file for the PPP loans. There's also clarification on the number of employees and what goes into the employees' costs. One of the keys there is a lot of confusion is you can use 2019. That's now been clarified. You can use 2019, or you can use the previous 12 months and use those for your averages. Independent contractors, a lot of confusion of the way the law was written with respect to the independent contractors. And with respect to that, people were, and I've seen some models that included independent contractors in the compensation. This Q&A clearly said it should not be included. Those contractors and sole proprietors should file on their own. And then the big one, which caused lots of confusion and may have caused a lot of applications to get, I'm not going to say misfiled, but filed maybe too low, is there was a requirement that federal taxes reduce the payroll costs, federal taxes withheld, including FICA withheld. The employee portion of that does not have to reduce the payroll costs relative to those calculations. With that, I'm going to start heading into the questions. Here's one, Brian, I'll kick this to you since I've been talking. If you have to reduce salaries, will that negate PPP forgiveness?
So that's a good question. And when you look at the law, there's absolutely a provision in there that talks about reducing forgiveness for one of reasons. It would be either reduction of salary dollars after the loan is originated, or a reduction of the full-time employee. But whenever the SBA issued the interim rule, the only forgiveness that they talk about is a 25-75% rule associated with payroll costs and non-payroll. Does that mean that reduction of forgiveness will not be implemented as part of the SBA? That's unclear. Because of the way they wrote the interim rule, it says that they will provide additional guidance in the future. So that way, that it's possible that it still might be part of the forgiveness reduction come after the loan origination.
And then there's a follow-up question on forgiveness, and maybe I can answer this in a broad way. Will there be uniform forgiveness? Will there be a uniform forgiveness form, or will it be lender driven? There is a calculation that we have in the interim final rule, which is coming from the CARES Act itself. I think there's going to be more clarity on that. It will not be lender driven or form driven at this point. I'm assuming we're going to get clarity and that you as a company will have to file based on those rules. I would expect those rules to come a little later. Brian, you want to give a quick recap on how they stand right now on the forgiveness?
So on the forgiveness, the way what we've been hearing is it'll be about a 6-month period from the time you look at the loan and when you'll know about the forgiveness. I think it's going to be on a bank by bank basis, and much like the application process, bank by bank, each one will have their own process to go through on the forgiveness side.
And then somebody asked for clarity on the salary comment. When you're excluding the 100,000, it's only the the cash compensation. So the benefits on top of it would get added. When I say added, they're part of the calculation. You get to get the benefits and the health benefits and the retirement payments. Those get added in when you're calculating your loan amount. Sorry, give me a second here. If a company is deemed eligible by meeting the necessary requirements, will the PPP loan be forgiven immediately or after the 6-month deferment?
So I can take this, Joel. So the way if I interpret the question appropriately, I think you mean immediately, like there will never be any interest. And the way the interim rule was written, the interim rule allows for forgiveness of both principal and accrued interest. So if the full loan is forgiven, there will be no accrued interest at the time of forgiveness. Now, we'll say that the initial law only said that the forgiveness could be up to the principal. So that is the way the law was written initially, but the interim rule was revised to include principal and accrued interest.
I think I've covered what we have in here.
Just a reminder, if you have a question, to type it in the chat section. I did see Ray Bueller's hand up. I don't know if you were actually raising your hand or if it was just in front of your camera, but if you have a question, please type it into the chat section.
Just to give a little information here, we are, one of the interesting things is the affiliation rules. And, just some clarification here. I'm going to read this as we wait to get a few more questions. This came out of the Q&A. Are small business concerns as defined in Section 3 of the Small Business Act required to have 500 or fewer employees to be eligible under the PPP? No, a business is eligible if it meets either of the following two standards. Meets the definition of a small business concern under Section 3, and then which means you have to meet the SBA industry standards for employee size or the SBA standards for revenue size, or the alternative size standard. The alternative size standard requires a business meet both of two conditions: maximum tangible worth of not more than 15 million, and then an average net income for the past 2 fiscal years of not more than 5 million. All right, and then the second one, if the company employs not more than a greater of 500 employees, or the size standard and the number of employees established by the SBA for the industry in which the business operates. A lot of confusion still around this. Everybody should keep in mind, you do need an addendum to list the affiliates, and it's not a straight voting control provision under those affiliations. It is a control provision. They will be looking at it, and you need to aggregate these companies. You make the determination, and then you need to make the affiliation rule of determination.
Are you taking questions from people who've applied originally for the disaster loans and then had seen that there was now suddenly $10,000 forgivable under that program? What are you advising your clients as to how to make sure they've taken advantage of that appropriately?
Brian, either you or I can take it on the.
I personally haven't had anybody already applying for the EIDL loan and that grant forgiveness in my client base that I've been talking to, but it's a good point that there is a $10,000 grant available to companies as part of this COVID-19 and CARES Act responses that was added to, or part of the CARES Act for small business employers.
And the $10,000, if you take out the grant or the EIDL loan, the EIDL loan, if you do take the $10,000, it has to get paid off by a PPP loan if you take a PPP loan. And then if you do an EIDL loan itself, you can't use it for duplicative costs that are payroll costs under the PPP loans. If you do, then you have to roll it in to the PPP loan and refinance that also.
It's good information. I had not heard that. Thank you.
That's for loans after January 31st, 2020, that it's required that you refinance. And to Joel's point, if that loan was for April payroll costs in your application, you're not able to use it for April payroll costs. The PPP loan can't be used for the same April payroll costs.
And what are you seeing right now in terms of the financial institutions? There was a lot of concern Friday and throughout the weekend that a lot of the portals hadn't been working and that perhaps all the money would be allocated. What are you hearing from your clients right now on that front?
Well, it's kind of both sides. As scrambled as I think the companies are, as we have been as advisors, as the attorneys have been. I think the lenders and their institutions have probably taken the brunt of trying to get this done in such a quick fashion, not having a huge amount of rules. Certain banks weren't preferred or set up for SBA lending and then suddenly got approved. From that standpoint, so they've really been scrambling and had some issues. I've heard, some of the portals opened up and then had to shut down. At one point there was an initial loan application and then that changed when we got the second lender application. So it's been varied. some banks are up and running. Some banks are, still struggling a little bit with it, which is completely understandable in my mind. I think they may have had the hardest job of this all. And so, I've said all along, and I've said to our clients, I've said internally, you do need to be having conversations with your lender, and you need to have them, you need to have started. If you haven't started, you need to have conversations with a lender if you're deciding to do, go for this loan. There was a mad rush. I haven't seen a statistic on how much has gone out yet today. I've seen some different numbers. I just hadn't seen one yet today, how much they've been able to, get out the door. I will say that the banks are focusing in on their own customers right now, which is understandable. They want to keep their companies, that they've had relationships, probably long-term relationships, help them, first, and new customers, or, a bank that doesn't do it kind of, is a little unfair to those people. But, the lenders want to get their customers taken care of first, make sure they're stable, and then, they'll help as many people as they can under this provision. I got a question. What is the time frame from PPP application and actual dollars? I've seen it done in a day. I don't think that's realistic. I think that was most of them. I think you're talking about a couple days, 2 to 3 days. They're trying to get them as quick as possible. It goes to the bank. The bank underwriters review it. You may come back with questions, and it gets submitted to the SBA. And then when it comes back, it's pretty much, writing a check. I have not seen the loan agreement yet. I'm assuming it's pretty standard SBA loan agreement, but haven't seen one yet. I know some clients and some people I know have gotten some money.
Okay.
Brian, you have anything to add on that one?
No, I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's going to be bank to bank. And I think the thing we'll see as the process gets more routine, the money from application to receipt by the borrower will be quicker too. Is kind of what we expect and what I've heard in conversations with the banks.
Here's one I started dealing with last night. Are CPAs eligible to receive the 1% agent fee? Any pushback from the lenders? That made it up to the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Plus, you've heard some talk, are we really acting as agents? When I went through the CARE Act, it talks about actually preparing the application. I think at this point, we're trying to help our clients. Our position is we're not going to go to lenders. I'm still not sure I can understand who I have an agency relationship with. The banks didn't come to us to go get them loans. So it's a little confusing. I think we're going to take a very practical approach. To be honest with you, we're not filling out a huge amount of applications. I mean, it's more with helping clients determine what's the best path for them. Some cases, I see my guru Kirk Mitchell on the screen here. You point out that gone through. You have to do an analysis of whether you can't take the tax credits or defer your tax payments if you take a PPP loan. So, and then you have the EIDL loan. If McConnell comes in with something else on Thursday, maybe they're adding the funding to this thing. You have no idea. So, you have to do, the math behind these things.
Any other questions from the group? If you joined, we're asking you to type the questions into the chat section here. Any common problems that people are encountering out there, and technical types of questions while we have the professionals on the line. No?
Good, it must be clear.
Yeah, I was telling Joel we had the local director of the SBA on a call last week and ended up with more than 60 questions, which I think she stayed up late last night answering, and actually we've published the answers to all of those questions on our website today, so you can actually find some more guidance from the SBA if you log into the main site of the Tech Council, as well as a recording of that particular session. I don't want to prolong the call if there aren't other questions, so maybe just leave it out there for another minute.
Another kind of issue that kind of saw today that I saw for the first time, well, two items. One's a clarification. The question came across is if you're in a partnership and you get a K1 and you take your money in distributions, are you eligible for this law? Because you may not be taking quote unquote payroll compensation. There's what's it called? There's really no clarity. I can honestly say we reached out to a bunch of people and we're still hoping to get some clarity on this because I'm not sure where they fall. But there's significant number of companies that operate under those what's it called? Those tax structures and the partnership structures that may be having a problem. We do expect also, I think it's Friday, the rules to come down on independent contractors and sole proprietors. They have not been able to file yet. So I think, Brian, it's Friday, right, that we're due the rules on that? Is that
Correct. Correct. They're allowed to start applying on April 10th.
And I'm not exactly sure. The form itself doesn't lend itself to a sole proprietor or somebody that's an independent contractor. So I don't know if there'll be additional guidance coming out. There is, the other guidance I think is due out Friday. It should be 10 business days is on the mid-size loans for the companies from 500 to 10,000 employees. We're supposed to get some guidance on that also coming out. And, and I think that'll be of interest to a lot of companies that got knocked out on the affiliation rules. Mm-hmm. I've heard rumors that they'll make some changes on the affiliation rules, but that's rumor. There's a lot of people, I know associations lobbying right now. Private equity firms are having issues. People that don't have franchise agreements or hospitality that have lots of different stores and go over 500, but they're providing a service. So there's lots of issues, lots of lobbying going on. I'm not sure how you lobby somebody that's not in Washington at this point, but I'm guessing they figured it out.
Yeah. Well, we do have a call tomorrow with Senator Toomey with about 20 of our companies talking about that particular issue.
Okay.
So, fortunately, our members have at least stayed in touch with us. How they're going to vote is a much bigger issue because they haven't quite figured that out. So a couple more questions have come online here. Credit union doesn't offer PPP loans. Any suggestions on how to help Diane out with that question?
Well, my thoughts on that question are, you're going to have to go to a lot of the banks. I don't want to be particular in any banks. A lot of the banks, you're going to have to, start calling around. If somebody, your best bet is if somebody in your company deals with another bank or has a relationship, that's where I would start right now. Having the relationship is really key. The credit union, might be a little bit of a problem, but you're going to have to look around. And like I said, if anybody in your company has a relationship in another bank in some way, mortgage or something, leverage that to get into that particular bank and see if you can move up the line in that particular bank.
Yeah.
So I see a question here about the number of employees and if, a company with one employee is any different from a larger company. And from the standpoint of the law, it would not seem like there is a difference as long as the company meets the eligibility requirements of less than 500 employees or the SBA rules associated with their 7A loans. And the way the loan would be structured is based on payroll costs. So if that's the structure of the employment agreement with that one employee, then it would be the same as other larger companies that are eligible for this loan.
And then I think there's a couple comments here, or good comments. I just got a call from my lender for sole proprietor's application being on Friday. How do you write the salary if you just file a Schedule C? I'm not sure. You're probably going to have to use the Schedule C to support it. I think you're still going to get limited to the 100,000. If you make more than 100,000, I think you're going to get limited. And I really don't understand the mechanics of that quite yet. I'll be honest with you, Brian. Do you understand the mechanics of how
Of the
those
100,000?
independent contractors and sole proprietors are going to file?
I don't know yet, since they haven't opened it yet. I believe it'll be, I don't know if they're going to do a separate application like you were talking about. We just haven't seen it yet from a information issued by the SBA.
All right. I think here I just Munchin, Secretary Munchin has just requested an additional $250 billion for these programs. That's kind of got a link to the Washington Post site. So if somebody's interested in that, to be honest with you, they're doing this faster than I thought, but I think the money just burning out so fast. Like I said, I haven't, I usually check at the end of the day to see how much money people are saying, you know, they got applications for, etc.
Yeah, yesterday, Joel, the number I saw was Bank of America had almost 36 million, and then Wells Fargo had the 10 billion, and then Wells Fargo had another 10 billion from what I saw. And there's other banks that weren't reported in there.
Yeah, I mean, you have JP Morgan, you have Citi, you have PNC. I mean,
yeah,
the money may burn through pretty quickly here. So another 250 maybe will calm everybody a little bit, hopefully. Any other questions, Brian? Kennedy, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so no, I think you've covered, a lot of the things that we're working on right now. That's great news. Thank you for whoever shared that news about the Secretary adding additional monies. We had been trying to make sure our companies knew that this wasn't going to be a race to the bank. Congress doesn't always do what's common sense, but in this case, they wouldn't have simply let people to hang out the drive because they weren't there quick enough. And there are some other things that we actually need to do to make this program a little bit better. And particularly as a technology council that represents a lot of investment-backed startups, we don't want them being left out in the cold. And, they were left out in the original disaster loans. They were left out in the state loan program because they weren't profitable and didn't have collateral. So we're really working to fix that problem and any others that are coming up. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I'm not sure what else I can add. If you need information, I would start at our website. I think we've added a lot of content there. Or you can always reach out through there. I think we have a portal where the questions are going. We're getting questions, and hopefully we get everybody through this. That's our goal. Get our clients, get the community, and get everybody back to work. It's been I've seen all my fellow workers via Zoom and Teams for the last, we're on our 4th week remote. So I know what everybody's house looks like now. So
Yeah, I think that may well be it in terms of questions for today. We'll be back here tomorrow with Tom Weichel, who is the Vice President for SBA programs at PNC Bank. He'll be taking your questions. I'm sure we'll have, quite a few things that are maybe bank specific. Also, if anyone didn't feel comfortable asking questions in this open session, please feel free to email me afterwards, and I'll try to get you connected with an answer in the next couple days. My email address is bkennedy@pghtech.org. And then also just to remind everyone on this call that every day we're hosting a series called Business as Usual, which is at noon. Email me registration link. Tomorrow we'll be hosting Christina Casota, who is the CEO of the Airport Authority here in Pittsburgh. And then Thursday we'll be hosting a timely meeting for your discussion. We'll be hosting Congressman Connor Lamb to talk about what Congress may be doing, not only in a longer term stimulus package, and a number of us have heard them focusing on stimulus for infrastructure, for example. We'll be talking, I think I mentioned, we're also talking to Senator Toomey tomorrow. So hard to try to get the tech sector here represented. I can't thank the team at Schneider Downs enough. I was not joking when I introduced them and said a lot of other firms turned me down and said, I don't fault them. They're very, but it just goes to show how community-minded the team at Schneider Downs is, and we appreciate working with them, and look forward to no other. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up call and just say thank you again to Brian and to Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.